Hi, welcome to the Rittner Floral School in Boston, Mass. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner, and it's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today. The time of the year, it's early winter, and we're already thinking in terms of Valentine's Day. And if you'll notice from the last couple of videos we've been showing, we've been coming up with a little different approach to Valentine's Day. We've been saying, okay, we know the standard 12 roses, that's great. But let's come up with a slightly different approach. How about a half a dozen roses, but mixed in different ways? Okay, you say, my loved one, this may be a little bit too much. He or she will look at it and say, well, it's lovely, but it's huge. And also it's rather funky and contemporary, but my tastes tend to be a little bit more conservative. I'd like it to be a little smaller, a little bit more romantic. Hey, that's one of the beauties of floral art. We can go from one extreme to another, coming up with things that are funky, contemporary, weird, strange, kinky, and we can also come up with some things that are also a little bit more conservative or a little bit more romantic. We can do that, and we can still do it with 6 flowers. And in this how to do video, we're going to show you how. So let's remove this for a minute. Very, very pretty, but not what we're going to do for our loved one. We want to come up with something that is a little bit more what we would call romantic. I have a container here. It's got about a half a block of foam in it. Let's come up with something, and we're going to limit ourselves on this video to about a half a dozen roses and still come up with something that's kind of cool, funky, fun, easy and quick to do. To start off with on this design, we are going to use a little bit of foliage. The kind of foliage that we're using, this is salal. Salal, it is an amazing foliage. It's wonderful to use. You can get great coverage from it. There are many different foliages out there, each with their own unique characteristics and their own thing. But we're going to start with our salal, and I'm taking small pieces of my salal foliage, and I'm using it to essentially cover my mechanics and to create an overall pattern and form for this design. It's really easy. At Rittner's Floral School, we believe very strongly that learning floral designing should be quick, easy, and fun. And that's exactly what we're going to show on this design today. I think you're going to see how you can come up with something that's quick, easy, fun to do, and really showy, and it doesn't have to use a huge amount of stuff. And that's what we're doing here. I'm starting off with some small pieces of salal foliage, which I have cut prior to getting on camera to make it a little bit quicker for you to see how to do it. And I'm just taking these little pieces, I'm working them in, essentially greening my base lightly. I am leaving some space in between because we do want to get our flowers in here, and we've got some very, very cool things that we're going to play with. Now, I said we were going to use some roses in this because roses are definitely a flower that we all love and admire around Valentine's Day. So I'm going to start with my rose. And notice I'm not using a red rose. I am deliberately going to use on this design white roses and also a nice bicolor. In other words, what I mean by that is it's kind of pink with kind of reddish edges to it, but it's not a pure red rose, because I want to show you that you can get out of that rut and you can come up with some amazing, cool things and come up with some really neat florals by doing that. So you notice that so far we've got 3 of our roses in place. I'm going to place another one kind of down over here, placing a 4th. And then let's get our 5th rose in. And we're going to get it over on this side over here. So let's get a 5th rose in over on this side. And then let's get a 6th rose over here. The whole idea here, folks, is to show you how you can come up with a design that doesn't require a dozen roses, but still is quick, easy, fun, funky, and kind of interesting visually. Now I'm going to mix this with a few other things. So let's take some of our carnations. I know people talk about carnations, they're very common and all that, but you know what? You can get amazing coverage out of them. They come in so many different colors. They're very, very hardy. You can't kill the darn things. And they fill space so well. And notice that with only a few of them here, we're coming up with something that really looks very, very nice. 3 of my carnations mixed in with my 6 roses. Look how that fills the space so nicely and easily for me. Now there's another flower that we want to play with on this design that I think you're going to find kind of fun. These are dendrobium orchids. Dendrobium orchids, one of my favorite flowers. Of course, my students tell me that all of my flowers are favorite flowers, but I love dendrobes. And the reason I like them is because they're a prestige flower. They're beautiful. They come in white, they come in pinks, they come in lavenders. We can take them and we can break them down into smaller pieces. They work very, very well. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a few of our dendrobium orchids and we're going to mix them in. In other words, we're going to mix a little of our dendrobes here and there into this design. And by doing that, it is going to help give, again, a prestige factor to our arrangement. And notice, they're very, very natural looking. They look very, very pretty. They're good keepers, and they mix so well. Don't get overly hung up in your combinations. You can use all kinds of very, very cool combinations on these things to come up with some really, really beautiful and lovely floral art. And you'll notice that with just a few of our dendrobium orchids worked here and there, we can come up with something that is really pretty, that is lovely, gives us a great effect on our designing. And I'm just taking these and just gradually working them through and mixing them with my other materials. So notice, yeah, I only have 6 roses, but with the addition of 3 of our carnations and a few stems of dendrobiums, look at how pretty that has become. Now I could stop at this point if I wanted to, but wait, there's more. Let's take a little vine and work some vine into it. I know we're going with a classical look here because we're assuming that whoever the recipient of this does kind of like classical, but at the same token, I just can't help myself. I mean, it's just so fun and funky to take some of our vines and materials that we have and mix a little of it in. It gives kind of a funky effect to our design, and it gives a very, very different kind of feeling. It feels very, very natural. And so I'm just taking a few pieces of vine. You can get these. These can be ivy vine or something that perhaps you have growing on the side of your building, and then just work a few pieces in and notice how that gives a really, really cool effect. It feels very natural. It feels very, very funky. It's classical, but it doesn't feel stodgy. In other words, I feel very, very strongly that we can come up with classical expressions on our floral art and have some really, really neat things that appeal to somebody who might be a little more conservative. But just because it's more conservative doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be stodgy or boring. In other words, we can come up with something smaller, something that is a little more traditional, and yet still come up with something that really feels great. And notice that in doing this, we've come up with a lovely design. This is a romantic arrangement for Valentine's Day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roses. Only 6 roses in this arrangement. A few stems of dendrobium orchid broken down. 3 of our carnations, a little bit of our vine in here, and we have a lovely romantic arrangement for somebody whose tastes are not on the funky side. They like more romantic, but still not boring. What do you think, my viewer? Quick, easy, and fun. Quick, easy, and fun, that's the Rittner Floral School way. On behalf of all of us here at Rittner's Floral School, we thank you for coming in and visiting with us today. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner. Come back and watch more. I'm sure you're going to have a great time enjoying playing with some of these ideas. Thank you.